Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podfluxxx. This is episode 59. You may be able to tell by our neat little captions that I've added that is a naturally tanned Ricky Reyes, and I am a badly sunburned Kevin Fulton here in Long Island. Ricky, I spent the day by a pool and thought, well, why would I sunblock? It's 97 degrees out, and I could use the color. And I am the color of mostly undercooked meat right now.
Yes.
How was your weather and weekend down in Texas?
Over 100, around 101 today, as it's been pretty much all week. I love how we'll get like severe torrential downpour, thunderstorms, lightning that'll knock power out and like close businesses, and then 20 minutes later it's like nothing ever happened. If it weren't for the floods in the streets, you wouldn't have known.
We had one of those yesterday, and I looked at Rachel and I was like, let's see if the kids want to go play because it was like so hot yesterday.
Yeah.
And then we had like a sun shower, but like a torrential downpour for 20 minutes.
Yep.
And I remember when I was a kid in the summer and it was really hot out like that. And then we did a quick rainstorm. We'd be like, oh shit, let's go play in that.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were not interested.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were like, no, Austin heard play in the rain and he was like, yeah, no. Thea considered it for a minute or two. And then ultimately she was like, you know what? I'm going to go play in the rain. But by the time she decided to, the rain was already done.
Right.
So it was a little too late on that one. But that's how the weather's been. But getting into what we're doing here today, normally we would start our podcast off just how we just did. And then we would immediately get into talking about current wrestling. Some might, we might talk about how Jacob Fatu finally showed up, or how 500,000 people just watched AEW. But we're not going to talk about any of that tonight. What we're going to do tonight is a little different. It's going to be a trend that we'll be getting into moving forward. So you shared with me over the last few days an interview that Conan played on his Keeping It 100 podcast of Christopher DeJoseph, or that, am I saying that right?
DeJoseph.
Christopher DeJoseph from Lucha Underground. Why don't you explain to us a little bit what was in that clip?
Well, it was kind of what Conan wanted to address was, I guess, the problems between Conan and Lucha Underground with, we'll call him DJ for now. We normally call him DJ. DJ was on an interview explaining the problems that, at least from his side, from his point of view, that he had with Conan. And I just brought it up. I brought it to you to talk about because he didn't lie, but he did gloss over and like somewhat sugarcoat like an important part of what he was not talking about. So he just kind of brushed over the fact like, oh, I don't know these guys, like claiming like he didn't know me, which is what I wanted to get into, which is clearly not the fact. The other two guys, I know that they would see each other from time to time, but I was in contact with Conan for like 12 years pretty regularly, and like phone calls, not like emails or texts, but like we would talk on the phone for a really long time, and we wrestled each other and we talked at shows all the time. They brought him to Ring of Honor. They paired me up with him and Homicide in Ring of Honor for the Carino Homicide feud. So he just kind of brushed over like, well, I would never say this because I don't know these guys. Well, he said what he said, and then he does know me, and he knows what he was saying because he pulled me aside alone to talk to me, and that's what he glossed over in a big way, you know. After that, whatever problems DJ had with him before were 10 times worse because I was getting phone calls from Eric, who was the executive producer, Tony, who was like a main guy in El Rey, and DJ himself asking me about what exactly was said, it was my idea to tell Hernandez after the fact about what happened, and then Hernandez and I talked a little bit, and then he knew it was coming. He just didn't know when, but he appreciated the fact that I'm one of the boys. I'm not with the office, you know. So
Right.
I didn't go in to hurt him. You know, but again, going back to Conan knowing me, he knew exactly who he was asking. He knew exactly why he was talking to me about this. So he knew what he was saying and doing. It just, you know, he was trying to cover up by glossing over the whole thing and saying like, well, I don't know these guys. Why would I ever ask these guys if I don't know them? Like,
Right.
I'm like, motherfucker, you know exactly what you said, and I can break down how that happened, where it happened, when it happened, and what happened.
Well, before we jump to that, I just want to add a little context to this, right? So, they play on the Keeping It 100 podcast, which surprisingly has worse audio than our podcast does. And for some reason, Disco Inferno sounds like a Muppet. I just needed to throw that out there. They play like a 5 or 6 minute video clip of Christopher DeJoseph giving an interview, right? And then coming right out of that, Conan responds. And what I'll do is I'll put that clip in the comments section on YouTube of our video so people can listen to it and then maybe, you know, then listen to our show and kind of be able to put the pieces together. But there were a lot of things that led me to a lot of questions, and I wrote them down as I was listening to them, so they're not really in order. But the first thing I wanted to know was who was Carlos, Eric, and Tony? Because Christopher brought him up, and then I think Conan even responded about them, and I'm not familiar with those names.
So, well, Carlos is Conan.
Okay, that makes sense.
Eric Van, oh, man, I forgot his last name. He was the executive producer, so he was like the head guy.
For
Tony, well, I'm sorry.
For El Rey?
For Lucha Underground.
Okay.
So Eric worked on the Contender TV show. So Mark Burnett owns El Rey, and he's like the big boss, right? And then Eric is like the person, his right-hand guy that goes out and produces all these TV shows for Mark Burnett's company, MGM. So Eric is like a major player. Tony, I don't know exactly what Tony's official role was, but if we had money issues, if we had travel issues, if we had anything contract wise that we needed to talk, it came from Tony. So he was like, those were like the two guys. That would be like Vince McMahon and Jim Ross, basically, of the show. So if you were getting talked to by Eric, something was going down, right? Kind of super important. So those were those guys.
What was Conan's official title or job
Yeah.
here in Lucha Underground.
Okay, so that's another thing that nobody ever talks about that I can elaborate on is he basically was an agent for the matches.
Okay.
And I think for the Mexicans, he was like that bridge between the AAA guys and the office for Lucha Underground. So he had input when it came to like what he wanted to do as far as with some of the guys, right? So he was a voice for the Mexicans basically in the office is what he was. But he was mostly a producer.
Okay. Now, in the clip, like DJ kind of made reference to Konnan poisoning the locker room and taking the AAA's guys' money. And then Konnan immediately rebukes that and says that he was trying to help the AAA guys out. So I'm curious on how the pay structure worked. Were the AAA guys getting paid per match, or was their contract rate going to the office of AAA, and then AAA was paying them per match like they would for like a more traditional booking?
Okay, so Konnan was not taking their money.
Okay.
If anything, Konnan was helping them find out that they were not getting all their money.
So
in that,
the truth about that.
yes.
Okay.
And the reason why I know that is Phantasma, Escobar in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me early on that some of the Mexicans were not getting all of their money. And I found out through him that Mascarita Sagrada, the mini,
Right.
was getting $50 a show.
What were they paying them per centimeter?
Right. They're paying him by weight. So
75 cents a pound.
Yeah. So he was telling me that when he would stay, he would ask to stay longer because what he was getting was his per diem money. And
Right.
he was sending his per diem as soon as he got it back to Mexico to his family because he would only have like maybe two he was a mini, so he didn't have a lot of vignettes because he didn't talk, so his appearances in one weekend he might make $150 in a weekend, because he can only do so many matches,
Right.
And so he was struggling in a big way. And then I found out Pentagon and Phoenix had told me a couple weeks later that they had major heat with Dorian and everybody in AAA because they wanted their money to come straight to them and not through AAA. So there was another guy, a real slimy looking motherfucker from AAA who was always in the office. And I'm talking always in the office. Like I didn't know what he did or what he was doing there at the time, but I found out he was the guy that was making sure that the money was getting sent to the AAA office and then the AAA office would pay them. So Tony put a stop to that right away, had a meeting with the AAA guys. Every time they would come into the office, he kind of grabbed them. Hey, here's what's good. We didn't know. They wanted to make it abundantly clear that the way the agreement was laid out was that Lucha Underground was going to just pay AAA. And then they thought that the money was just going to go straight to the guys and girls like it was supposed to, but it was not. So I had ran into Phantasma at the office one time, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, you going to the gym? Like what are you going to do?" And he goes, "I got to go cash this check and send money home." And so, I was like, "Well, I'm glad you guys fixed it, and we all feel bad that that was happening, so it was unfortunate that was a thing. But as far as Conan goes and helping the guys, like he really was helping them in that sense, like he was kind of giving them the heads up. I will say this, like, again, Conan's brushing over something, and I'm not saying that he's completely lying on anything, right? But he's one of the boys first. He's in the office now, right? But he's like I always compare him to like Steve Carino. Like when I went to Japan for Hustle, when I left New Japan, Hustle, I got hired by Hustle first, but that was through Rick Bassman, unfortunately.
Right.
So Rick Bassman was taking a bunch of my money, which I didn't know about until I moved to Pennsylvania, and then Carino started booking me. And then when the first night I worked like a 3-shot loop for Hustle with Carino, I got $1,200 on my first night. So I told Carino and I said, hey, there's a mistake on my pay. And he goes, it's not enough. And I was like, well, it's like too much. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I got $1,200. So he like pulls his phone out and he's like, yeah, that's what we agreed on, right? And I said, I don't know. I wasn't getting that much before. And he goes, well, what were you getting? And I said, I was getting $600 a weekend. And he was like, a weekend? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm getting paid by Hustle to be the outside booking agent. So I don't take money from you guys. He goes, you guys, Bassman was taking money from each one of you guys, to make up for the booking fees or whatever. And I was like, oh, I said, so what am I making per night? And he's like everybody else, $1,200. And I was like, oh. He goes, do you want me to take your money? And I said, no.
Yeah, I can imagine Steve
Yeah.
Looking at you with a straight face and seriously asking you, would you like for me to steal your money?
Yeah, well, that's exactly how it went. And I was like, no. Yeah. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I get paid a salary to do this. He goes, so I don't take money from the guys. And he goes, because I'm a wrestler too, so I know how it goes. And I was like, okay. So I did like quick math and I was like, man, this is going to be like a New Japan type weekend for me, like in 3 shots instead of having to stick around for an entire week, But what I was getting at was when it comes to money and stuff like that, Conan always pushes the guys to ask for as much as they think, almost to a negative, like in a bad way, like, oh, if he's not going to give you $1,000, no, go work for him. It's like, well, I can stay home and not make any money, or I can go to work for $750. I'd rather just work and make the $750,
So when he mentions, when Krista Joseph mentions in his part of the interview that Conan was poisoning the well in the locker room, if he's helping the AAA guys actually get their money, then what is he doing to poison the well?
So what he was doing had more to do with Conan versus Vampiro with the locker room.
Can you expand on that? Because I'm not familiar with any of that situation at all.
Okay, so Conan and Vampiro hate each other, like legitimately just despise each other altogether.
Okay.
But they both work for AAA and are trying to gain power in Lucha Underground, both of them, like simultaneously. It's actually comical when you see it in the back, right? So Conan goes around to people that he has a relationship with to try to rally them up and tell lies about Vampiro. Well, Vamp's trying to hold you guys back. Like, this is stuff he would tell us, like me and Cholo, separate the locker room. You know, he was trying to
Okay.
rally up like his guys versus Vampiro's guys. And then simultaneously they were both in DJ's ear on creative. You know, oh, we should do this, we should do that. These guys should be doing this. This guy should be doing more of that. You know, it was a lot of, you know, because it would be like it was like me and Cholo. We had a good relationship with Chavo. So Chavo was really the person that helped us the most. And I had good relationships with Conan and Vampiro. So I was playing like all of it, you know, because I wasn't not friends with anybody. So I was not on one side or the other. You know, I had a great relationship with Vampiro. I've, you know, done a lot of stuff with him. And then Conan, you know, we were close. I'm not close, but we were like, he did know me and I did know him, you know, and we did talk. And, um, you know, and I had a good relationship with DJ as well. Like, as we'll dive into more Lucha Underground later, that changes to where by the end it's a completely different relationship. But you know, for this particular time and moment, and like the beginning of Lucha Underground season 1, it was a lot of that, like basically divide and conquer between Vampiro and Conan, you know. So
Now, Vampiro and Conan were both there from season 1, day 1. They
yeah,
were both a part of
yeah,
this.
yes,
As you've said on the show, and you've said to me, you know, you were one of, if not the first person hired for
yes,
Lucha Underground,
yes,
and you've told me that that call pretty much did come through Conan, and
yes,
that Conan tried to be in touch with you years prior for AAA USA or whatever they
yep,
were going to call it.
yep,
Now, we get to the part of the interview where he's talking about B-Boy, and then he goes, that other motherfucker, what's his name? He does the thing that everybody does when they're pretending to not remember somebody's name. And then
yes,
he's like, oh, yeah, Ricky Reyes. Uh, and then he starts talking about the Hernandez thing. And then he
yep,
mentions the heat that Hernandez had down in Mexico.
yep.
So before we get to your part of this, uh, what was Hernandez's heat with Conan in Mexico? Is that something you know about or you can speak about or?
Yeah, I did. So I talked to Hernandez about it a handful of times. Uh, they had some sort of falling out because they were building Hernandez up real big in AAA, like a serious monster. He wasn't beaten for like 2 years or something on TV, right? So they protected him huge. It had more to do with Conan's falling out, ironically, with TNA, and then his racism lawsuit against TNA, and then TNA went and pulled Hernandez back out of Mexico, and
Okay.
then that was a little that caused a little bit of riff with them there, Conan and Hernandez. There's I don't know all the details, so I'm not gonna like don't quote me on a lot of this stuff, but there was an incident that happened in Mexico between Conan, some bad people, and Hernandez. And then Hernandez was no longer welcome to Mexico for a little while. That's all I know.
Okay.
Um, I don't have the details of it, but I remember Hernandez said it was bad. It was really bad. Um, and then that's when TNA had restructured his contract, and he was okay to just do TNA. He didn't need
Right.
Mexico anymore.
All right. That
So
because that sounds familiar. I feel like I remember Hernandez being off of TNA television and being in Mexico, and
yeah,
then all of a sudden there was a big re-debut
Yes.
of Hernandez and TNA.
Yes. So what else were you asking about that?
Well, I wanted to know about the heat that was between
Oh,
Hernandez.
okay. Yeah, that's right. Right. So while we were starting, no, this was the middle of season 1. Hernandez and we became pretty close. Like we would travel together. That's why he said
Drinking buddies?
Drinking buddies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I tell you
Yeah.
something? I was making notes while I was listening to this, and one of my notes literally says "drinking buddies?" LOL.
Yeah.
Because I know you, and you and I would like to consider us really, really, really great friends.
Yes.
And I got you to drink with us one time out of like 10 years. You threw a couple back one night. So I can imagine that Hernandez might have had a harder time sitting down behind a bar than I did. So go ahead.
Right.
Please elaborate.
No, that was, yeah, I remember that. So the thing about me and Hernandez, right, is like, we're both good friends with Homicide.
Right.
So, Homicide would call me and like, yo, how's Hernandez doing over there? Is he doing good? Is he listening? Blah, blah, blah. Kind of like, are you watching my kid?
Yes.
Type of thing. And I'm like, yeah, bro. I said, so it helped inspire me to talk more with him because I felt like I at least wanted to hear him out on his whatever he thought was good and bad here. And then I also wanted to hear what was good and bad in TNA, right? So I could learn more from his perspective, So we started kind of just, talking about just random stuff and becoming good friends. Like we'd sit in the bus together, like, and hang out. We'd work out in the gym together because they had like a gym there in the area. So what Conan had saw was me always around Hernandez, So what else was there? You said
the drinking buddies thing.
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty much it. Like it was more about that. That he saw us always around. Oh, that's what it was. So he saw us around each other a lot. And then one day, I got on the bus and I went to the side where Hernandez was sitting, and he goes, no, not today, bro, not today. It's not a good day. And I was like, all right, my bad. I didn't know if shit was going on at home or what, right? Like he's on the road a lot. So I sat across on the other side. Well, we get out of the bus and I'm grabbing my bag and I'm up to him and I'm like, what's up, big man? You good? Like what's going on, And he said, he pulls me aside, like grabs me, pulls me. He goes, look, man. He's like, I did some shit that I guess the office is mad about. He goes, and I got to have a meeting today. I don't know what's going down. I might get fired. He goes, but you're going to get heat if you're hanging out with me. He goes, we're good. You got it? And I said, all right. And I literally turned around and just walked to the building. Right. I was like, okay, cool. So come to find out, while under contract with Lucha Underground, him and Chavo did a tag team match in Mexico on what was a CMLL promoted event. So I later found out that Conan had reached out to Dorian and to Eric and said, hey, is it cool me and Chavo do this booking? If they're going to pay us a lot, we're going to win, whatever, they're going to protect us or whatever. But it was like from their TNA days when they were tag team champions, they were trying to bring them down. It was more of a TNA type team as opposed to a Lucha Underground team.
Right.
But it's while we were, Lucha Underground was going on. So he got heat for that. And he got heat because it was Conan telling on him.
Okay.
And stirring shit up.
So now now I want to get to the meat of the matter here. And this is a story you have told me. And so when Conan started bringing it up on the podcast, or on, when he was rebuting that interview that DJ did, and I already know, but the world at large doesn't know.
Right.
So Conan comes up to you and Mr. Cisco and B-Boy and asks you to do him a favor. So let's see how this, just lay that out for us.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't come up to all three of us.
Right.
He came to me by myself.
Okay.
So he found me early in the day. This was just after that particular incident where him and Chavo went and worked that show.
So this is all season 1.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Season 1. Okay.
Conan was only there for season 1. Yeah. So he finds me and says, "Yo, let me talk to you real quick." And I was like, "Okay." And we were like in the room with everybody. So I'm thinking, yeah, we have like a dark and like a short segment. Like what did I possibly get in trouble for today if one of my matches aren't even on TV? Right? So he pulls me into this room and he's like, "Yo, man, Sean fucked up big time down in Mexico." He goes, "And I need you to put a beating on him." And he goes, "And I mean, get it on him." And he goes, "You know what I'm talking about." And I said, "Okay, all right, no problem." And he was like, "I'm serious. He fucked up big time, and he's going on and on, right? Talking about how he fucked something up." So at the end of him asking me basically to fuck him up in the match, he said, "Do what you got to do, whatever, but let him know that this is his receipt." And I said, "Okay." Then he tells me, "And like I told you before, bro, I got you. I always got you. I got you your spot here. And he kind of sort of did. So I never really took that away from him. He's like, I always got you. I got Homicide. You guys are my boys. We go back. So that's why it did bother me a little bit the way he kind of like downplayed how he don't know me. Like, I don't know these guys. Like we're just random indie guys that he bumped into one day, you know.
But I can also understand the mindset of like, if you tell this guy to go shoot somebody and then somebody asks you about it, I'm going to say, I don't know that motherfucker either. You know
right.
what I mean?
But that's exactly why it kind of bothered me, because I'm like, he's going out doing the classic one, storybook telling 101, right? I don't know him. Like, and I'm like, really? We've talked on the phone for hours, like, not about the weather, so that's why it irked me a little bit when the way he downplayed it, which only goes on to further that he did do this. He just doesn't want to, of course, he doesn't want to break this down the way we are. So anyways, he gets me in a room. He tells me to hurt Sean, right? Doesn't know specifics. He says, just let him know this is his receipts for fucking up in Mexico. And I said, okay, no problem. The only problem I had was I got dipshit B-Boy with me, right? On my team.
Right.
So I tell Cholo, and I said, listen, you cannot say anything. This doesn't go beyond you and I, which I love Cholo. I really do. But he's just as bad with B-Boy when it comes to gossip. And he knows it, whether he wants to admit it or not. But I love the guy. So I told him, I said, listen, at some point in the match, you're going to tag me in, and I'm going to tell you, get off the apron. And he's like, well, why? What's going on? And I said, I'm going to do some stuff with Sean. And I said, and I don't know how it's going to go. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if I go and kick Sean flush in the face, in the mouth or something, he's probably going to retaliate and then think we're all after him. Right. So I told him the spot is when I get in, go to the floor. So I tell him this, and he's like, okay. Well, I'm gonna tell Benny. I said, please do not tell Benny. I said, don't. I said, please don't. Right. So we go over the match.
I'm just gonna run it past the ref and the agent.
So we go over the match. It's simple. In my mind, I'm thinking, I am going to work this around to make it look like I legit took a free shot, you know. So in my mind, I know I'm not going to hurt Sean, right?
Right.
First off, that's not my style, like whatever. But secondly, I'm not going to hurt another guy who's out here doing the same job I am, right? So I'm thinking I can pull a kick pretty good. So I was thinking, oh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop him one that's going to look bad, and I'm just going to get on him and start telling him, just push me off, push me off. So I had my out, right? So I thought, all right, this is no big deal, right? Just another day in the office. Well, Cholo goes and tells Benny. Okay, so here's where everything goes south. Benny's scared because he's scared of everything. So he's like, what are we going to do, bro? What are we going to do if Sean fucking turns around and kills all of us? And I'm like, bro, stop. Like, that's not going to happen. I said, I'm going to take care of it. So I looked at Cholo and I said, I told you not to say nothing. And he goes, why didn't you tell me, dog? And I'm like, because I don't want to tell a lot of people, because the more people involved, the more people involved. Like, right. Just let me do something. I'll make it look right. And then, well, I'm the one that's going to have to go talk to Konnan after this anyways. I know what I can do, right? So anyways, Konnan comes back in to where we're hanging out. We had our own like little locker room.
Before the match.
Before the match.
Okay.
Yeah. So before the match, so we get to the building by 8:30 a.m. Bell doesn't ring till 4 p.m. So there's a lot of time to get in plenty of trouble there, you know. Yeah. So we're all around each other all day long. So Konnan comes back in, and he comes up and he kind of like fist bumps me or whatever. And he's like, you good, dog? And I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. And Benny's like, well, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do if fucking Sean turns around and like tries to punch one of us. And I'm like, fuck. So Konnan, also correct to what he said, like, oh, these guys, like, I told them to go in there and be stiff and snug or whatever. Like, what he said was chop meat, right? This was his phrase. He was like, chop meat, you know. He wasn't telling that to me or even to Cholo. He was trying to tell Benny to be stiff because his shit looks bad, right? Like, this was not a secret in our locker room. Right. So he's prepping us up like, oh, just go in there and be, you know, blah, blah, blah. So then he goes into producer mode. You know, you guys got to be stiff. Your shit looks bad. He's trying to tell all of us so he's not singling out Benny. And we're like, all right, whatever, you know. So he tells Benny, don't worry about it, bro. You're good. I got your back. Always got your back. Ask Ricky. I got his back, right? I told you I'm going to bring in Homicide. And I was like, well, I didn't ask you to bring in Homicide, but, you know, whatever, you know. In my mind, I'm like, whatever's making you think that this is going to work and be right. So anyways, we go through so now it's the match time. And I think it was like something stupid like Mil Muertes, Jeff Cobb, and Sean Hernandez against us. So it's something bad like that. Like really,
to begin with.
Yes. Like the worst case scenario possible. And it's not like I had Rocky over my shoulder who could take care of himself. At least take care of himself, right?
Right.
Like we'd have to stop guys from beating us up to go stop other guys from beating up Benny. So they would beat us up instead of beating up Benny. Like, this is the only way we could save him, right?
How did he get that job?
I can go into that too. We'll go into that in season 1 stuff. All that'll come out. How he got it, and how he lost it is a whole thing I will get into. So it's 3 big guys against us, you know. So anyways, we're flying all over the ring for everybody. Anyways, gets to a point where it's me and Sean And I'm thinking, okay, it's a short match, it's dark, they're just setting cameras. So I start like kicking him in the face, right? So boom, boom, boom. So I'm not stiffing him to hurt him, but I'm making it look like I'm working, and I'm working a little more blatantly obvious that I'm kicking this guy in the face. So I kick him a couple times, boom. He gets up. He looks like he's gonna do something, like an elbow or something, a back elbow to me or something. And I single leg take him down, boom, real quick. And I get on top of him and I start, and he just kind of, flings me off, right? Like, boom, get off me, Mexican. And so I get up and I kick him, tag, and I'm out. And I know it looked enough, right? Because it was a little bit of a shoot scenario.
Right.
So we get to the back, the match is over. Sean's so big, he don't even realize what happens. He got his big dive over the top rope and his dance, and he was happy, right? And then tour of the islands, boom, 1, 2, 3. Everybody was out. Get to the back, Conan standing there. He starts nodding at me like he's pleased, right?
Right.
So I just walk by, give him a nod, and I just keep going because I didn't really want to get into details about what we did in the match, right? So he seemed pleased with it or whatever. So we get to the back, and of course, Cholo and Benny are like, "What are we gonna do?" And I said, "Look, I'm gonna talk to Sean tonight." So we're still not allowed to hang around with Sean a lot because he still got heat. So anyways, I remember we went up to the top floor. They had like a pool and everything at the hotel. And I remember that's when who's the MLW guy? Court Bauer was there. So he's buddies with Conan. So Conan's trying to get him on with us somehow, I guess maybe creative or something. So they're hanging out, smoking, drinking, whatever. And Hernandez was off to the other side. So I walked over, me and Cholo did. And I said, "You want to come with me? You can." And he was like, yeah, that's cool. So we walk over and I said, "Sean," I said, "Look," I said, "Conan wanted me to do something to you tonight to hurt you." And he said, "Oh, really?" And he just kind of laughed and he goes, "Well, I knew it was coming. I just didn't know it was going to come this quick." And I said, "Well, obviously," I said, "it didn't happen, but I just wanted you to know in case it got around or whatever." And he goes, "All right, cool." So after that is a little bit of a blur for me. Like, I don't remember if Sean stopped coming around right after that or something, but shortly after season 1, he did file a lawsuit against Lucha Underground. Then he ended up coming back to Lucha Underground, I think maybe a year or two later. But that was kind of the end of it as far as that incident.
So how did the office catch wind of Conan's little plot there? Would that have been during the Hernandez lawsuit?
Well, that was the lawsuit was for that.
Right, but I'm saying that's how the office found out about it.
Yes, because that's what I'm saying. I don't remember if Hernandez didn't come back like the next week.
Right.
And then I remember he came back at the very end of the first season because he was supposed to be Matanza.
Okay.
The thing that Jeff Cobb was.
Right.
So when we were leaving towards the end of season 1, Sean was like, "Yo, check this out." We went into the trailer and he was in his Matanza character that they had for him. But Sean didn't like it. So so they moved the character over to Jeff Cobb. And the character looked completely different. Like, the mask was different. Sean had like a bodysuit on. And it was like
car mechanic coverall with, right?
Yeah, it wasn't any, no, that's what I mean. It wasn't anything that it became. It was a completely different character. So they spent the entire season building that for Sean, and then at the end of season 1, he was like, "No, this shit's stupid. I don't want to do it." And so, so yeah, so that's when that happened, because when season 1 ended, I kept in touch with Eric, and then I got a call from DJ shortly after season 1 ended, and he said, "Hey, did Conan come to you and ask?" He goes, he goes, "I need you to tell me the truth, 100% the truth, no matter what." And he goes, "Are we clear?" And I said, "Yes, of course." He goes, "Did Conan ask you to hurt Hernandez in a match?" And I said, "Yes, he did." And he was like, "That's all I need to know." And he said, "You'll be getting a call sometime this week from the El Rey lawyers." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "You need to tell them what you just told me, and that's it." And I said, "All right." And then that was it. And he hung up. And I kept in touch with Eric throughout the off season, just asking like stupid questions or whatever. And then he asked me, he said, "Hey man, did the lawyers call you yet?" And I said, "No." I said, "DJ talked to me about it. No one's called me yet." And he was like, "All right." He goes, "Just do me a favor, man. Just be honest with what happened, bro. We don't want you guys in, these situations. It's unprofessional." I said, "Okay." I said, "That's no problem. So, and then that was the end of it for that, at least for that particular moment.
So, what do you know? Was there actually a restraining order levied against Conan by Lucha Underground? What do you know about that, and what can you talk to us about that?
I heard rumors of a restraining order only because Ray was coming in after season 1, and him and Ray were like working together with business stuff. So I don't know if it was like, oh, Conan's representing Ray, or his connection to Lucha Underground, or the higher ups. I don't know. But I had heard rumors about that, but I didn't really believe it. And I don't know if they really did or if they didn't, but I never saw Conan back in the building after that. So
Now, did they? I mean, so all of this happened. Whatever happened happened, and then the major fallout with Conan and Lucha Underground happened during the off season.
yes, because then he called me.
Conan.
Yes, Conan called me, um, and he started yelling at me, and he was
Shocking.
like, "What's that?"
I said, "Well, that's shocking."
Yeah. Well, he's like, "Hey, bro, what the fuck is your problem?" And I was like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" And he's like, "Why are you telling people that I'm telling you to hurt other guys? Like, that's not me, bro. I'm not a coward like that. I would never do that." He goes, "Now I got in trouble with my boss in AAA. He goes, and shit's going down over here, and I'm in the fucking middle of it, and it's all because you lied." And I just let him kind of vent it all out. And I just laughed and I said, "Bro, you know who what you said, you know who you were saying it to, you know what the point was." I said, "If you and I got a problem now," I said, "I'm cool with that, but don't sit here and call me, try to make it like this is all my fault because you lost your job."
Right.
You know, like he's mad because he lost his job, and a late, like not even 2 years later, AAA ended up firing him, or he left AAA or whatever. For ironic how this guy leaves all these companies on bad terms, right?
Right.
But yet I'm the guy he doesn't know about that he asked to hurt another guy. So anyways, so yeah, he ended up calling me, right? Um, he unloaded all his bullshit, and I just let him finish because I wasn't going to argue with him on the phone.
Right.
And then I just said, "All right, dude, well, we'll, whatever, like I know what I said, and I'm going to talk to the lawyers about it. They're supposed to call me." I said, "And I'm just going to say what happened." I said, "If it don't sound good for you, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. And he's like, "Oh, okay, it's like that, bro, after all I did for you. And I said, well, you didn't do anything for me, really. I said, but, whatever you want to think, and that was the end of it. Well, maybe the next year or something later, he had texted me about something and he was like, hey, we need to talk. And I was like, all right. So he called me one night and he just said, basically he's like water under the bridge, whatever. And then he was like, oh, I'm going to get you an MLW. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, and then that was pretty much it. So.
Sorry, I was muted. I started speaking, but I was muted. I find it funny, though, that somebody who'd been in the basement in the business forever, right, who had made all of his money,
Right.
finds somebody like you and is, saying, for all the things I've done for you, this, that, and the next thing, when really all he did was put you in a jeopardizing position to blow a big gig.
Right.
So, kind of screw him for that. But the one thing I am curious of is, like, when you guys reconvened for season 2, did they sit everybody down in the locker room and were like, hey, Conan's no longer a part of the staff here, give anybody a heads up on it, wanted to see if anybody had any questions or, comments, concerns, anything they wanted to talk about, or did they just pretend like he never existed there to begin with and today was any other day?
Well, it wasn't brought up publicly like that. By the next season, you're talking probably like almost 5, 6 months later.
Right.
So I feel like the news had filtered around that he was no longer with Lucha Underground already, because all the dirt sheets had picked it up and spread it around. I don't think anybody brought it up to me, like asked me anything, not even Vampiro. Sean wasn't with us by the season 2. So I think that the lawsuit that Sean had placed on El Rey was a clear-cut reason why he wasn't around anymore.
Right.
It was a shocker that he came back later. Sean came back later. I think season 3 or something like that. But and I was happy to see him, and I mean, we've talked a bunch since. And even when I moved to Texas, like, my first show living here, he was on it. And we were just sat back bullshitting for like an hour in the locker room. So we were always good. Supposedly Conan, when he called me like a year later or whatever, trying to bury the hatchet, like, I guess we're good or whatever. First off, I didn't have much need for Conan to begin with. The reason why we kept in contact so many years was because he kept telling me that he was going to bring me to AAA in Mexico. Yeah. But this was when he had Jack Evans, Teddy Hart, X-Pac, Rocky Romero, Alex Kozlov. I think he wanted to add me into that mix somehow, obviously. He did call me when Rocky just came in the office and was like, I quit, I'm going home, fuck you guys, and like left. And he calls me and he's like, fucks up with your partner, bro. And I'm thinking in my head, like, he's been living there for 3.5 years now. I haven't talked to him maybe but once or twice. And it's usually like, hey, man, how is it down there? Part of my reasoning was to try to see if I could get a spot there, at the time. And this was like, I don't know, what, 2008, 7, something like that. Like, this was years before Lucha Underground, So I never really talked to him much unless I saw him at a show, and then we'd, bullshit for a minute or two. But I remember the first time I met Conan was when WCW had just closed down. He knew Rick Bassman and came to a UPW show. Well, this was when Rocky, in 2001, maybe, I think Rocky had dislocated his elbow, did a frog splash, just like Eddie, and like popped, and his elbow just popped right out, just the exact same injury. So TJP was my partner. He was the backup Havana Pitbull that I had. So it was me and Conan. It was Conan and Psychosis against. Was supposed to be me and Rocky, but ended up being me and TJ. And TJ is like sitting there shitting himself the whole time. So Conan was real cool with me even then. We talk partially because I was already talking. I was talking with Rikishi and Chavo Guerrero in the back. So then Conan came over and blah blah blah. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're working together, right?" So we go back as far as that day. But even that day, I remember telling TJ, like, after it happened in the ring, I said, "Fucking Conan tried to shoot on me in there," and he was like, "When?" I swear to God. So we're laying the match out, right? And I said, "Look," I said, this is kind of my student. I said, but he's good. And then I said, "Can you and I asked Nicho, Psychosis, the original Psychosis. I said, "Can you please work some high spots with him and shine him up a little bit, please?" And he was like, "Yeah, brother, no problem. I got you. Like no worries." So him and TJ went off to the side and like made their high spots. Well, then Conan goes, "Yeah, bro, you want to roll around a little bit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's cool. Like, I don't care, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll do some this, some that." And then he goes, "I got to do my crotch shit in the corner." And he goes, "Well, I'm only do it once. I'm not gonna." And I said, "All right." I said, "It's your gimmick, whatever. I don't care." He goes, "All right." He goes, "People want to they like it, whatever." And then I'll do the whatever. And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." Well, we're on the ground, and I feel him like cinching up on my arm, so like in a awkward top wrist lock type thing. And I'm thinking like that's a little much. So like I grab my hand to kind of block it, and I'm like going. So he goes to grab like my ankle, like in like a low ankle pick. And like I kind of sprawl out on him, and I just naturally like cross face him, take his back, and then I grabbed him and shot an armbar as fast as I could. Like I've probably never done it any faster. And I popped my hips like just enough to let him know I'm here, and he like jumps up, and then we face off. And then he kind of gives me like a low five type of deal, and then tags out, and then TJ and Nicho shines up TJ real nice. Well, anyways, I told TJ about it, and he goes, "Yeah, I thought that looked like a little bit of a weird face off, He goes, "Because didn't you have the arm bar?" And I was like, "I had the arm bar."
I had the arm bar.
Yeah. And but then after that, I remember later that night I was talking to Rikishi. Conan came over. He was like, "Good shit, bro, blah, blah, blah." He goes, "If you ever need any help, hey, Martine?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know Martine." He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to work for him next week. Like, get on the show, And then it kind of turned into like, "Give me your email and, I'll help you with whatever." And then that kind of started our working relationship in a lot of ways.
Maybe he was secretly setting you up all these years later because of that armbar. I mean, this is all to me super interesting because like the dirt sheets weren't super all over Lucha Underground like they are with everything else today. So like by and large, you don't really hear too much of the behind the scenes gossip of Lucha Underground or even just the behind the scenes goings on. Like Conan during this interview, and we'll get into all this stuff as if people haven't figured out by now, we're going to start kind of doing a deep dive into Ricky's time at Lucha Underground and our time together at VPW Victory Pro Wrestling, just to kind of change our format up because covering what goes on pay-per-view and TV every week is kind of getting a little boring. And to be honest, I don't have time to watch 13 hours a week of wrestling. And you sure as hell aren't doing it. So, but like he was mentioning like the production truck and he was mentioning the attendance, and it seemed like he alluded to it being a paid attendance, a paid crowd, like you guys were selling tickets
No.
And I didn't think that was the case, as you've told me many times that it wasn't the case. You guys were not uh, like a live touring wrestling company. You were a TV show. So we've got a lot of ground to cover here on Lucha Underground. There's a lot of meat on the bone. I'm excited to do this. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing about, like doing something like this now, right, is like I don't have any kind of stake in,
Right.
anything that I'm shooting to work here, Like these are things that I was around, and things that were happening that the dirt sheets didn't get. A lot of the times the dirt sheets, they weren't completely wrong in
Mhm.
in a lot of what they were saying, right? They were just adding their twist to make it a lot more worse sounding, so it was more interesting to bite on, right? Because you're not going to talk about a company that's doing really well and having great shows and everyone's super happy there, so you had to go throw in, the fact that, like, I know Cornette would shit on the fact that we weren't selling tickets, and
Right.
we weren't, and it was an email thing. You had to get on a list. Then they would give you a number, like, and you were eligible to get into the building. You know, um, you were part of the live audience, like a Jimmy Fallon show or whatever. Like that's how those shows work. But to
You're just
make
pop culture.
a little bit.
Wow. Jimmy
It took
Fallon.
me a minute. It took me a minute to know his name. Like I was
Yeah.
like, wait, I know it's out there, but uh, but that was the whole. We weren't a wrestling promotion.
Right.
We never were. We were a TV series about a wrestling promotion, and people forget that. Like they only pro wrestling fans and the dirt sheets categorized us as a wrestling company. We were never a wrestling company.
Do you think that might have been part of the disconnect between Conan and what was actually kind of happening there in Lucha Underground?
Sure, absolutely. Look, it was for all of us because you're talking to a locker room of wrestlers.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So it took a couple seasons for us to like take it down a notch and not take it so personal. I remember the one time I was having a conversation with Son of Havoc, Matt Cross,
Mm-hmm.
and he was really really bummed out, right? And if you ever met him, he's like the nicest guy in the world. So I walked by and I said, "You all right?" And he was like, "Man," he goes, "What the fuck are they doing here, bro?" Like, he goes, "2 weeks ago I was challenging for the world title." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "Now they got me doing, like, I'm slipping on a banana peel out there, losing to a girl basically." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What's wrong, bro? What's the problem?" And he goes, "2 weeks ago, now to this." He goes, "How much farther am I going to fall?" And I told him, "Bro, first off, when it gets released, it's like a month and a half later. I said, just
Right.
like, it's not last weekend. Like, last weekend was WrestleMania last weekend." And he was like, "Yeah." And then I said, in that time, they're going to tell the story how you got involved in this nonsense. And, you know, you're fine here. You're one of the most over characters that we have. And I said, "We're not doing live events. Um, you know, we're not a wrestling company." So what I'm getting at is, like, even a guy like that, you had to kind of talk him from the ledge because he's ready to go into the office and start, throwing tables, right?
Right. And
And that's how we were wired. Bro, I had a number of conversations with DJ where I was really upset. And then he puts his hand. I remember one particular. I was like, it was one of the times I was doing the Veneno thing where I had a mask, like I was an under, and I was supposed to lose in like 30 seconds. Well, the first week I did it, right? I did like a 3-minute match, and then they chopped it up into 30 seconds anyways. And then I remember MVP was my agent, and I said, did they like the match? And he goes, no. And I said, am I in trouble? And he's like, probably. He goes, they didn't want that. And then I said, oh. And then he goes, I think, he pulled out his paper and he's like, I think, yeah, it was like 30 seconds, bro. You guys went like 3.5 minutes. And I was like, well, Penta wanted to work and I didn't want to just go out there and just lose. And he goes, not my call, bro. He goes, not my call. Talk to them. And I was like, all right. So I remember, shortly after DJ and I had a conversation, and him, like, we were sitting on the steps and he put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, you're in the main event angle with the owner of the whole, you're chasing the evil owner of the company. He goes, your story is what makes this whole thing go round. You see what I'm saying? Like, I was even at a point where I'm like, what the fuck, 30 seconds, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, that's what's important here. Story. He goes, not the match.
Yeah.
And even I had to like I had to digest that. Like, I had to go in my room and break that shit down, because if not, I was going to go in there and I was going to flip my fucking shit. Just like at one point all of us were,
I remember I remember watching some Lucha Underground and rationalizing things like when you were working with what was the Exotico?
Pimpinella. Yeah, Pimpinella.
Right? And I remember, I don't remember all the details of the match, but I remember watching it and being like, man, why is Ricky doing this? Right? And then it clicked in my mind. I was like, wait a minute. Ricky's not doing this. Right? Right. Ricky Reyes didn't win or lose or wrestle one match in Lucha Underground. Right. Matt Cross didn't lose to a chick. Son of Havoc did.
Right.
So there was an interesting thing, an interesting way there for you guys to disconnect who you normally were in a wrestling ring from who you were on that television show. Therefore, nothing you guys really did there, especially for the mask guys, but nothing that was really done there, good or bad for anyone's career, could really follow them and impact them someplace else down the road. Correct. And that's what I think was a really cool thing about Lucha Underground.
Yeah, it was really good all the way around. I mean, this particular incident here is like a minor, hiccup type thing. But overall, I think, because the things that we learned in Lucha Underground, you can really only learn in WWE.
I mean, it's how to do TV.
Yes. How to do TV, like a TV series, not like a wrestling show. And that was so crucial to getting better and understanding a different avenue of what the big time is. So it was as close to big time I thought at least I was ever going to get in the United States, at least. And so I took advantage of it. I learned everything, and there's a lot of nights where I had to, really take time and try to break everything down that we're doing and why we're doing it and how it looks and so forth, So I didn't spend a lot of time mad there. I was, at first I had my moments of wanting to have 20 minutes of a match, right? So I could show off all my stuff too, right? But then it came, right? It came with the Joey Ryan match, the and we all had to learn, we all had to learn we were going to have our moments at some point this season, So it really became, all right, let's go out there and support the guys that are having their moment now and be happy for them. And that's the type of locker room it was. You know, I remember when I came back from the Joey Ryan match, was it PJ Black? Remember him? He was like in John Morrison's group, like
Justin Gabriel.
Justin Gabriel, yeah. I remember he came to me and he was like, bro, you guys are nuts, bro. This motherfucker like skydives and shit for fun, like in real life.
Did he break both his ankles base jumping or something?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He told me I was crazy because me and Joey Ryan went out and did a couple of stunts in our 5-0 street fight match, you know. And but that's what I mean. Like, here's a guy that can do everything under the sun, right? And he was back there cheering and oohing and awing during my match, you know, and it came up to me with and even Morrison, John Morrison afterwards was like, bro, that was fucking insane, bro. That was crazy. And I'm like, what was crazy? Throwing donuts at each other? Like, you know, like I mean, I took a couple big bumps, you know, but there was nothing crazy. But Saint Thunder Rosa, she came up to me and she gave me this big hug and she goes, oh my God. She goes, it just, you could feel you guys were just having so much fun out there. Like, she goes, you could feel that, you know, like, and as a wrestler, you see something and you're like, man, he's probably having the time of his life right now, you know? And that's what she was saying. Like she goes, you could feel like this was your guys' moment, you know? And we all did that with each other, you know? Like, I remember one time, I remember one specifically with Son of Havoc. So we did the match with the 7 medallions or whatever we did for the title or whatever. Well, that Ultima Lucha was setting up Son of Havoc versus Pentagon Dark, right? So we were all in the match. It was all 7 of us. So we did all our stupid spots or whatever. And at the end, like I remember going into the match, you know, Matt Cross or whatever, he's like, I'm not doing too much. I'm not doing too much. And I'm like, yeah, but the ending is you and Penta. Like, that'll be a big thing, dude. Even he didn't believe the hype. He was like, man, I don't know. Bro, I swear, him and Penta faced off, like face to face in the ring, and the whole place just lost their shit. And I remember just from the side watching on the ground while they and like hair was standing up on my arms. And we got to the back and I was like, can I tell you something? And he was like, yeah, man, what's up? And I was like, that was one of the coolest moments I've ever seen in wrestling, was just you two going face to face. He goes, and I could just see everyone in the crowd, like a wave in the crowd, you know, like just elevated, like they were like, holy it's happening. And I was like, if we were selling tickets, I was like, that just sold out the building right there.
Yep.
And he like gave me this big hug and was like, man, thanks, man. That he goes, I didn't know, you know, like, I don't know. And I'm like, man, I don't know. But whatever they wrote out, however they developed the show, however these characters were being built, it was all done right, you know. And I always give DJ such big credit for that because he knew what he was doing, you know. And like Lucha Underground would have looked completely different if it was, you know, what if Conan was in charge of creative? Like, you're talking basically just AAA, but no one can understand it.
Apparently, there would have been a lot of 6-man tags.
Yeah, 6-man tags. But the thing is, too, is like talking to DJ, is he wrote the angle for Taker and Shawn at 25.
Right.
The light versus the dark. The whole thing of Undertaker coming up from hell and Shawn being brought down from heaven. Like, he wrote all that. You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, that's all Lucha Underground was a big story, you know, and having moments like that out there where you hear the crowd, you know, like even us coming back, like, I mean, we'll get into this too, but like coming out for the 6-man title tournament. And then we came out at the end when, you know, that reaction we got that day, bro, like that was one of those things where you're like, that was the coolest thing I've ever done. Like, you know, like, and it was all surprise. And they kept telling us it's all right. Don't worry about it. Trust me. It's going to work. And I'm like, you sure? Like, blah, 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 blah. I'm an indie wrestler. I know what the fuck I'm saying, you know? and they're like, shut the fuck up. This is big time shit. This big boy, situations here. You don't even understand it yet. And I didn't, and I really didn't. Because I'm thinking like, I got to be in the show in order for them to like me, So.
I think I'm excited now. I'm excited for us to go through all this stuff. I'm excited because you seem excited. You were there the whole time. You saw everything. So there's a lot of meat on the bone for us here with Lucha Underground. But I'm going to stop us here today. And then I'm going to have to do some homework this week. And I say next week we jump in, both feet, and really start to dissect this this thing that was Lucha Underground. You with it?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds good. Rick, listen, you have a good week. Motherfluxxers, we'll catch you on the other side. Let me run this gimmick, and we'll be back next week with more Lucha Underground on Podfluxxx.